Man, the myth, the juggernaut. Alex Lexus hitting you with the head crush. Cancel into a pimp smack. Got a little helicopter flying overhead. I'm gonna wait and see when this thing passes us. Alrighty. So, I've been extra light on content for a while. Now with the job and everything and new life priorities, I do these when I can. But I may have to do like a panel, as you can see with the title. So, we are in day 4. And shout out to all of the channels that have been covering the FTC versus Microsoft. Like Destin, he's the one I've been watching the most. D Batch, Jay Wood, a lot of them, are covering things. And also shout out to the other folks who are eerily quiet, aka Dreamcast Guy, Amazing Lucas, MBG, who seemingly has changed his tune to a degree. I love it. Salty tears, baby. But you know, I just wanted to give my thoughts on everything thus far without getting into getting into the weeds. That's something I'll probably save for the podcast if and whenever I do it. But we are now seeing some information with items that should have been redacted but weren't redacted correctly. But with that said, let's just summarize everything. All right. So we got Microsoft fighting for survival in the gaming space and trying to leverage studios, try to bring exclusives. This is what, certain fans of a different ecosystem said. I want Microsoft to compete. I want them to fight. And now they're fighting. They're mad that they're getting hit by the punches that they're throwing. Doesn't make sense. Make it make sense. This is the Microsoft that me and Demizzle Free Play Mode warned y'all about. The Microsoft that is now awake, ready to use that wallet, and Sony had played the wrong game with the wrong company in terms of, if you're going to, start buying things up, Microsoft has deeper pockets, a bankroll that's almost infinite. So, and when they really come to fight, now look, any other company might have caved in and just let the CMA stop them. They would have let a lot of things, just obstacles, seemingly just stop what they were trying to do. But Microsoft is fighting this. This is the Microsoft, well, the same energy that I noticed that they had during the 360 era when they had Peter Moore at the helm. And bravo to Phil Spencer. He was getting grilled. And a lot there was. I'm not even gonna put those guys out there. I'm not gonna say their names, but they were trying to put some of the hearings behind a paywall, and leaking information or whatever. You guys are trash. You know you're trash for that. But when I was listening to those fools, it was just like they were like, aha, gotcha, Phil. No, if you really listen to what Phil Spencer said, it pretty much unfolded the FTC's case. Satya Nadella, he went on day 4, pretty much unfolded their case. There's nothing. I'm loving this judge because she, like rational people, is just taking all the data, the facts, and what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. You have Jim Ryan, Sony. It seems like they're super entitled. It's like, how dare they, not owning Call of Duty or whatever, telling a third party, making demands. That is baffling to me. They're sitting there, oh, you're gonna keep games off of PlayStation, this and that, while Final Fantasy 16 is a console exclusive. Final Fantasy 7 remake, still console exclusive to the PlayStation. They're sitting there accusing Microsoft of, oh, they're gonna do this, while Sony has been doing it for the last decade and a half. I'm loving how this is getting put to the forefront because a lot of the Sony ponies, a lot of the naysayers were like, well, just put out good games. You know what? Sony has done super well because of that practice. They spend to make sure that those games don't show up anywhere else. You wonder why they're in the lead. I've been saying this for the longest, and now it's coming out in federal court. In federal court. So all those Sony fans who are arguing with me and all this other stuff, in your face, chumps, in your face, because I called it. Now it's out on full display. That's how Sony stays ahead. That's how they stay ahead. It's like it's scummy. It's underhanded. I love what Satya Nadella said. I would like to live in a world where there weren't exclusives to that degree. If you have first party, homegrown stuff, fine. Nobody's asking for God of War on the Switch, and nobody's asking for Mario on the Xbox. That's your stuff. But when it comes to third party, Sony had been brokering those deals that they learned from Nintendo's old practices into the new era, and they were super aggressive about it. And that even came up with how aggressive Sony is in terms of locking up deals. And the thing that bakes my noodle is the fact that, oh, they're not going to have content parity. They're going to have content that the Xbox will have that PlayStation wouldn't have. But yet we have Avengers and Spider-Man exclusive character to the PlayStation. Come on, make it make sense, folks. Make it make sense. You know what I mean? Jim Crying Ryan sitting over here worried about content parity and exclusive content while they did it with Call of Duty and locked up a game mode for a year. For a year. In that in court, crying that Microsoft could potentially, and rightfully so, could do the same to them. It's now we're at a point where it's just like, you know what, the Sony ponies, the Dreamcast guys, the amazing Lucases, the Red Dragons, those asshats, you can't argue the facts. They are out there in your face. Make sure you have a bib, sitting in your high chair and eat that cake, because the truth is now on full display. That is grimy what Sony had been doing. And now, some of the stuff where, Housemark that created Returnal, then the whole thing with Bungie, just the mere fact that Microsoft was talking about acquiring them, Sony came in, oh, we're going to buy them. We're going to undercut all that. Grimy. But hey, it's business. But the judge made a good point. She said, are we about the companies or the consumers? Sony doesn't want you to pay into the Xbox ecosystem where you have another option to pay for your games. Sony is still stuck on that old, archaic, antiquated pay for the game up front and then move on to the next. The world is changing. Sony is a lot like Blockbuster, and Microsoft is like Netflix. And look what ended up happening. Blockbuster was the cat's meow back in the day. And Friday nights, for those of you who remember, go rent movies. It was often popping on Friday nights, and you see your people, your peers in there, and all that. And then Netflix came and changed the game. Now, what Blockbuster did that did themselves in was they did not adapt to the change. Netflix I can watch on this phone, on my laptop, my Steam Deck, or whatever. You know what I mean? Netflix knew how to change with the times where Blockbuster didn't. Sony is so stuck on, hey, I want your $70 up front. I mean, goodness gracious, like, you have to really be selective. Like me and my best friend Shinwar, man, I tell you, it's like we have to really stop and look. We make good money, we're adults. We can indulge in our hobbies, but God forbid that we were coming up in this era where there'll be a lot of games we'll miss out on, because $70 a pop is a lot. And even Microsoft, shame on them for following suit. It's almost as if Microsoft is trying to force you into getting Game Pass. It's like, hey, you know what? You can still get the games, but we're gonna also match the price point of Sony first party. And to me, I'm like, man, you know what? I got other things I would rather put my money into, and $70 a game is not something I want to do. You know, More than likely, I might. I've been holding out. Me and Shinwar are on Xbox Live Gold, and I think that yeah, the time may be coming where the jump, because think about it. What Sony doesn't understand, and I think what the judge is realizing, and what Microsoft had the foresight to see, was that we need another option to pay for our games, or whatever. Some folks like, oh, it hurts the developers. They only say that because that's a Jim Ryan narrative. Okay, Jim Ryan doesn't want to do that, and it's funny when you look at, you stand more to gain, kind of, but Sony doesn't have that upfront capital that Microsoft has. So where, let's say they put a game into Game Pass, they say it hurts the developers. You do know Microsoft pays upfront to get that game onto Game Pass, and whatever revenue share that comes from that, whether 2%, 3%, whatever, I don't know how the breakdown goes. As long as that game is on the service, it's gonna go beyond the life of that game. Sony, $70 right off the rip. That's it. That's all you're gonna get. But if that game is on a subscription service like Netflix, right? As long as that game exists on that platform, they're going to generate revenue from it. That's what these folks don't understand. But again, if Sony, actually, Sony was doing streaming with PlayStation Now before Microsoft. Before. I know, yeah, it'll blow your mind, right? You can't believe it, right? But it's what I fail to understand is Sony had a head start with the streaming, and Microsoft just outpaced them with it, you know. And now they have an infrastructure set in place, and if somebody, analogy I like to use, if you people are coming to a race with their car, right, and they're getting parts or whatever, and Jim Ryan, let's say Fast and Furious, Jim Ryan has his car and he has all this mods, and Microsoft decides, hey, you know what, I'm gonna do this. Jim Ryan is like, oh, wait, he's gonna get a supercharger for his car. He can't do that because he's gonna end up beating me in the race. Whose fault is that? Failure to plan is planning to fail. They should have adapted. They should have adapted. So it's not Sony's place to stifle Game Pass. It's not Sony's place to tell third party who and when and how to deal with other competitors. Sony finally played that card that I said years ago, folks. That I said years ago, that if Microsoft starts throwing money at it, Sony will not keep up. They won't. The only thing that I do feel bad about is, yeah, there are some titles that the PlayStation ecosystem may not see after 2027. But again, they were celebrating when that was happening on the Xbox side. But now the Sony ponies and Sony corporations getting a taste of what they've been giving for almost 20 years. All right? So all I want to say is this, I guess, I want to just collect my thoughts. I didn't want to go into extra detail. Like I said, I'm saving the weeds for the podcast. But Sony is crying in fear. And I've dealt with people in my life that did me dirty, and they went and hoot and hollering because they thought I would do the same to them. No. Sony is measuring Microsoft's potential to hold games from the PlayStation, because if Sony were in Microsoft's place, they would do it. They would do it. You know? Jim Ryan pretty much told on himself. He's like, if they were in a position to make Call of Duty exclusive to PlayStation 5, would they? And I guess in a way to kind of protect himself or not look bad in the case, he's like, I can't answer that. No, him and that other analyst who refused to answer questions, you guys are trash. Trash, absolute trash. But with that said, it's looking very likely. I'd be surprised if the judge rules with the FTC. She was seemingly in day two getting frustrated with the line of questioning. Like they were literally badgering Phil Spencer and trying to get him under oath to commit to a deal that exceeded what was originally offered to Sony. Smart play, Jim Ryan. Smart play. I believe there was a whole lot working behind the scenes. Oh, and then lastly, I wanted to touch on Red Dragon decided to post something on Instagram where he said Bobby Kotick and Jim Ryan were in talks, negotiating something that in the event that the deal gets blocked, some PlayStation deal or whatever. Listen, there's no proof, but if that was the case, and Jim Ryan was talking to Bobby Kotick, who's already an active deal pending with Microsoft, that seems illegal. I'm just saying, that's like tampering. WWE folks, you know what I'm talking about. You can't vet somebody who already committed to an engagement with a contract. So, if that's true, and that makes it to court, today is the last day, day 5. We'll see what goes down. Make sure you check out Destin's channel and then the rest of these guys because again, there's just so much information I can't even get into all of it right now. But yeah, things are interesting. Things are interesting. Sony's not looking good. FTC is not looking good. You know, all those Sony fans who are just like, ooh, look, they got Jim Ryan to say this, that, and the third, or Phil Spencer to say this, that, and the third. Understand this. At the end of the day, you are going to experience the same thing that the Xbox ecosystem had to deal with. Having games withheld, so on and so forth. Even though Microsoft says they're not going to, that email that was exchanged between Jim Ryan and Phil Spencer, where he was trying to leverage the ABK deal, and he'll stop fighting it if they can get the Bethesda games back on PlayStation. In that email is like, hey, what's existing, they're not gonna pull it. But any old IPs that they're reviving, those will be Xbox exclusive. Microsoft owns them. It's within their rights to do so. But Sony sitting there, begging, screaming, crying, hollering, and all that because Microsoft is about to do to them what they've been doing to the Xbox fans, their ecosystem, for more than a decade and a half. Let me know what you guys think. It is what it is. So, yeah, and the only reason Black Dragon, because I tried it before and then the video was turned and I had to download it and edit it and all that stuff. But rate, comment, and subscribe. I do want to have a adult discussion about this once this concludes. Again, I don't want to come off as attacking Sony fans, but there are some toxic Sony fans. I don't want to, back up the toxic Xbots per se. I will just say this, gamers should be able to have a dialogue and say, hey, what's fair, what's rational, what's right and wrong, what's ethical. I want to have those discussions. Some of the YouTubers who are predicated on all the, getting into the Sony pony Xbot and then the saltiness and all that. Like, it's all fun and all. It's funny, but like, let's have a real discussion to understand and unpack what's happening, because this is going to be a seismic shift and it's not looking good for the FTC. You can't deny that. Wink, wink, MBG. You can't deny it. It's not looking good for them. So, rate, comment, and subscribe. The man, the myth, the juggernaut. I'm out. I'll catch y'all later. Peace.